My name is Matt Groark. Today, I am gonna teach you, starting from the basics of charcoal, how to walk out into your backyard and master controlling charcoal on the most simple cooker, a kettle grill. In order to make some amazing at-home backyard barbecue, whether it's hot and fast, direct over a flame, indirect, smoking, we are gonna go over everything. How to master your charcoal, how to manipulate it for different temperatures and different meats that you're gonna cook. I started cooking with charcoal in the parking lots of Philadelphia, Lincoln Financial Field, tailgating for Eagles games. Every morning, 6 a.m., 7 a.m., I was up, packing the truck, packing the coolers. We'd get to the parking lot nice and early. First thing I would do is roll that kettle out and load it up with charcoal. Early on, lighter fluid was probably my way of getting it started. I was as much of a noob as you could get, so learning that process really began in those parking lots during tailgates. Cooking with charcoal, for me, the love of it, it's what I always go back to, and a lot of it has to do with the same reasons that I love cooking with wood-fired. Cooking with charcoal, very much like cooking with wood-fire, is very visceral, very cathartic. You're creating something from nothing that is literally going to put food on your plate and feed your family. For me, any chance that I get to be able to fire up a grill using charcoal and light that charcoal and manipulate that charcoal and control that fire in order to get the temperatures and the flavors that I want, introduce flavors to the charcoal, whether it be hardwood, fruit wood. We're gonna go over all of that to create some incredible meals that you're gonna be able to do from your backyard. Barbecue for me means, what it's grown to mean for me is just family and togetherness, and even more importantly, an understanding that I can create anything that I want. It's about so much more than the food. It's such an amazing community. It's something that brings people together. The relationships, the connections that I've made over the years, that is what barbecue has done and what it means to me. I would not be here without it. If I can give you one piece of advice that I feel I learned that is so important, it is through this process of learning how to cook with charcoal, be patient. I think for so long, early on in my process, I wanted results very quick. And I'm talking about just a recipe. I'm talking about just cooking a pork butt or a reverse sear steak or a rack of pork ribs, a rack of baby back ribs. You have to be patient with charcoal. You have to let it do what it needs to do and get to the temperature and get to the point where it's going to work for you and you're not gonna have to do as much. Early on, I rushed the process. If you're patient and you know how to control it and you know where it needs to be, which I am going to teach you, you will end up with the results that you are looking for every single time. Through this masterclass, you are going to learn how to conquer charcoal in every possible way that you can. A lot of people think that charcoal, I always thought charcoal was just throwing a bunch of it in a big pile in the bottom of a kettle and lighting it up. And it is not that simple. We have this vision of dad with his apron on in the backyard, grease fires and open flames. Charcoal is delicate, it can be temperamental, and we have to learn how to control it. And at the end of this class, you are gonna be able to manipulate it in so many ways that you're gonna be able to cook so many different types of protein in a very delicate way, if that's the way you need to do it. If we want a flame and we need high heat, we're gonna learn how to do that too. You wanna know how to cook with charcoal because it will open up a whole nother level of flavors and experiences with your food and your barbecue. From gas grills to pellet grills to griddles, there are so many options at your fingertips, but at the beginning, charcoal is what should set the standard. Grow from there. the char grill, the flavor that fire imparts, the crust. There is so much that charcoal has to offer, and that's what I'm here to teach you today. The versatility of charcoal is one of the main things you're gonna learn in this course. There are so many ways to set it up, so many ways to utilize it to create some amazing flavors. In this masterclass, we're gonna learn how to prep and cook chicken wings, spatchcock chicken. We're gonna do baby back pork ribs, one of the best bites in barbecue, beef Dino ribs. We're gonna learn how to reverse sear a bone-in ribeye steak, nice thick cut. And we're gonna learn how to smoke a 7 to 8 pound bone-in pork butt over charcoal for some of that delicious pulled pork. Welcome back, y'all. Today, I'm so excited because a few years ago, this was like a bucket list item for me to get on my smoker, and we're doing beef plate ribs, sometimes popularly known as Dino bones, a rib that Fred Flintstone would be honored to eat. I've smoked so many racks of beef plate ribs over the years. They, just like so many other things, have become some of my favorite barbecue to make and possibly the best bite in barbecue. We're gonna prep these today. Super simple. There is not much to it. We do have, some little bit of fat on the top, but a lot of this isn't that hard fat like you see on brisket that we get rid of. This is all gonna render down really nice. We're gonna cover it with seasoning. We're gonna hit it with some beautiful smoke. And we're just gonna let these ride on the Kamado SNS indirect. We're doing a little bit of a different indirect today. We're gonna be using the deflector plate. So the heat's gonna be coming from the bottom around the deflector plate, which you'll see in a little bit, to smoke the beef plate ribs. We're simply going to use a mustard binder, very thin layer, again, to help that seasoning really melt and stick and sweat into the meat. There is a membrane on these. Unlike with pork ribs that we did earlier, the baby back ribs, I am not gonna pull this membrane. We're simply going to score it. So to start off here, I'm just gonna take this fat cap on the back here that has that membrane, and we're gonna go ahead and just score it pretty easily. We're just gonna be able to really get that binder into here. We're gonna be able to get some seasoning. It's gonna sweat in between these score marks, and that's just gonna end up with a little bit of a better product. So our bone side is scored. That is the only prep I'm doing. I'm looking, there's not really anything to trim. There's a little bit sticking off the edge here. I'll go ahead and just pop that off real quick. We're ready to hit this with a little bit of a mustard binder. Again, don't overdo it with the mustard. Very thin layer, very simple. Again, working hand, glove hand. Make sure you get the sides because we're gonna season this very liberally and completely. This is a 3-bone. Most plate ribs that you're gonna get are gonna be a 3-bone rack. Anything bigger than that gets kind of crazy, but what's beautiful about these is as we kind of watch them over the course of the smoke, these are just gonna expand and get big and fat and juicy, just turn into these monster ribs that are for sure a showstopper. So once we're there, we're gonna go ahead with our, one of my favorite seasonings that we have in the Rub City line. Texas Hat Hanger just came out with this a few months ago, and it's been flying off the shelves. We are gonna season very liberally with our hat hanger. These ribs can take a lot of seasoning because they're big and thick and fatty. Gonna turn out incredible. Meat side, same thing, don't be shy. fully covered, coated, flavor packing, never lacking. Just money. See this side here? I mean, there's not a protein that's much more simple to prep than beef ribs. We are going to use the deflector plate on the SNS Kamado ceramic cooker. The advantage of this style cooker is just the incredible amount of heat that it can give off. It's great for searing, but it's also excellent for a low and slow cook because it just retains that heat so well, and the deflector plate helps control the temperature. We're going to use our charcoal briquettes because we're shooting for a longer, slower, consistent, even burn. That is what our charcoal briquettes will achieve, as we talked about earlier. So we're gonna take some time, we're gonna get this fired up. Our beef ribs are ready to go, seasoned. These are gonna sit for about 10-15 minutes while we fire up the Kamado. I'm gonna go ahead and walk you through how I'm gonna set up the SNS Kamado grill using the deflector plate and some charcoal briquettes. This is gonna be a nice, longer, slow burn. So the briquettes are gonna be absolutely perfect for this. This SNS kettle holds heat incredibly. So we're gonna have no issue rolling for about 4 or 5 hours with about a chimney full of briquettes. With the SNS kettle here, we have our grill. Great. All right, we're just gonna remove that, set it aside for a second. Here's the deflector plate. So I'm gonna show you ceramic. It covers the firebox where the briquettes are gonna lie. So the heat is gonna come up. The deflector plate is gonna protect the meat, the plate ribs, and the smoke is gonna come around the outside of the deflector plate and out the vent at the top. So deflector plate is a great way to do an indirect cook. You'll see it often on the Kamado style grills. All right, so I have my deflector plate and my grate out. So I'm gonna go ahead and dump a chimney amount full of charcoal. We're using briquettes, so you can either fill them up, fill a chimney up and dump it in unlit, or go ahead and just dump it, eyeball it. That's what I do. All that's left to do from this point is take your lighting source, whatever you're gonna use. I have a tumbleweed here. I'm gonna go ahead and drop this in the center of the pile, kind of let it dig down a little bit in there so that it's surrounded by some of the coals. And those coals in the center where the tumbleweed is gonna be lit will fire up first, and then they will gradually light up the rest of the coals over some time. We have the wood in there. At this point, we can go ahead and put our deflector plate in. Go ahead and put our grate on top. We're gonna shut this down. Once it gets to 275, nice clean smoke, we'll come back, put the beef ribs on, and then we're letting those roll for 4 to 5 hours. We want an internal temperature of 203 degrees. We can take them off. We're not spritzing. We are not wrapping. None of that. We're going straight through. Maybe rest for about a half hour or so at the end, and then we'll go ahead and slice them up. Okay, we have the Kamado at 275. I'm pumped to get these beef ribs on. We're sitting tight. We're gonna go ahead and open them up. The beef ribs are gonna go right in the center of the grate. What we're doing with these over the next couple hours, bark, bark, bark. That's what we wanna create. We wanna get that kiss of oak, and we wanna develop a beautiful bark on the outside. So in the first 2 to 3 hours, we aren't touching anything. We're not flipping them, nothing. You will leave them alone. If you're looking, you ain't cooking, so don't touch the smoker for at least 2 hours. Shut it down, leave it alone. I'll see you in a couple hours. Okay, it's been 5 hours. We're ready to open up the SNS Kamado. We're gonna go ahead and temp and make sure we're ready to pull these off. We're going to rest for about 30 minutes, just loosely tented, and then we'll be ready to slice into them, but let's check these temps first. Just beautiful. Some moisture here still. I know they're gonna be juicy. Nice bark created. The bones are just looking clean. I love it, love everything about it. I know just by the look of these that the temp is where we need them to be. I wanna show you guys something. This is kind of what I was taught. So many times people ask, how long do you need to cook something? How long, hey Matt, how long should this cook? How long is that gonna take? And I want you always to cook by temperature more so than time, right? Another important factor is to cook by feel. Sometimes you can just feel it, you can probe it, and without even looking at the temperature, you can tell by the feel that it's gonna be done. And I'm gonna show you how we know that by using a probe with these beef ribs. We're gonna hold it about a foot away, and we're just gonna simply drop it, and it's gonna drop right into the beef like butter. And that just went straight down to the bone. We're gonna end up right around 200 where I wanna be. We're at 198, still climbing. It's gonna end up at 199. As you're carrying through your barbecue journey, if you ever hear the term probe tender, this is exactly what we're talking about. The probe just drops right in, comes out clean. There is no resistance, no spring, in and out like butter. We're gonna go ahead and take these off. I'm gonna put them on the cutting board. I'm gonna loosely tent them. We're gonna let them chill out and rest for about 30 minutes. You don't have to rest at all. So I can go back and tell you that if you do have company and they're waiting, you can go ahead and slice these right away. Not gonna be a problem. But you do no harm resting them, tenting them a little bit. Let those juices settle in and redistribute. And when we slice these, it is gonna be the most beautiful money shot that you will ever see. Literally brisket on a stick. Eat it like a caveman. No utensils needed. Let's give them their rest. We'll be back in a few minutes and we'll slice into them. We're gonna go ahead and tent them with a little bit of foil. You do not have to wrap these super tight. Just a nice loose foil, loose tent. We'll give these about 30 minutes. Let them rest. We'll go grab a drink, relax, talk amongst your friends, and then we'll come back for the final slice money shot. These are gonna be incredible. Catch you soon. We're back. Best part of my job. It's been about 30 minutes. We had these tented loosely in foil. We're ready to slice them. They are still hot to the touch. We're gonna go ahead and slice these up. I have nothing but positive, excited vibes for this. And really, we're gonna cut these into 3 separate bones. This center bone right here is gonna be the money. All right, so nice and simple, we're using a slicer. Not gonna be any jagged edges or anything like that. And this is just gonna go through like I'm slicing warm butter. Just by listening to me slicing this, I know how ridiculously perfect this is. Let's get this second one. You hear that? The grand unveiling. We're gonna take this center cut right here. I mean, just this fat in between here, just melted away, beautifully rendered. Here you go. Beautiful smoke ring right along the outside. We just layered the flavor, that little bit of a mustard binder, holding on to that seasoning that we use, the Texas hat hanger, which like I mentioned is just absolutely incredible on beef. So the only thing left to do, well, 2 things left to do, but the first is the squeeze test. That is, I mean, that's just beautiful. So we absolutely nailed that cook. We can turn to the other side. Same result. Beautiful smoke ring. Perfectly rendered. That is as close to a perfect cook as you can get. Slide that bone out. Any way you want to do it, it's right there. I mean, that's the proof's in the pudding, right? As they say. So now you have this beautiful piece of beef. No bone. It's now boneless. Slap some white bread on that and I'm good to go. We can go ahead and slice it for friends. Get some cross sections here. So I just gave you the rundown of every way you could serve this, how you could slice it, how you could eat it. There is only one thing finally left to do, and that is to take a bite. Right here, all that smoke ring, all that fat rendered down, beautiful beef. Let's get it. Good Lord Almighty. That is the best bite in barbecue. There's no other way to react to that. This is everything that brisket is, but better. That's just my opinion. Try it. Let me know. Tag Groark Boys Barbecue. tag Embers TV. I want to see your results, and if you think this is the best bite in barbecue. Today we are making chicken wings, easily one of my favorite tailgate foods, and honestly one of my favorite and most fun things to cook, and the reason is because there is so much variety. So much you can do with a chicken wing, so many different flavors you can bring to it, and we're doing it with smoke, some Texas hat hanger by Rub City. That's going to be our salt and pepper base. And then we're going to spice it up a little bit with Woodfire and Whiskey's Jalapeno Ranch. With these chicken wings, we are doing a straight up indirect cook, straight 2-zone cooking, so that we can smoke them indirect. And then at the very end, we're going to flip them over onto direct heat to get that beautiful crunch, that beautiful crust that you have to have when you're eating a chicken wing. No one wants rubbery skin on a chicken wing. All right, single layer on the cutting board. Just lay these out. They're gonna be wet, they're gonna be slippery. We're gonna pat these dry. There is no reason to wash chicken wings, despite of the controversy that you see all over online. There's nothing in these chicken wings that aren't gonna be cooked off and taken care of by cooking over high heat. We're simply gonna pat them dry. There might be the occasional trim, all right? So perfect example right here. Out of all these wings, this might be the only one that I have to do it to, but you see how it just has all that extra skin. We're gonna lop that off, no problem, simple. We're just gonna go ahead and pat dry. Again, you can see I have a working hand, my knife, my seasonings, as well as a hand that I'm using for prep that's gloved. You don't need a ton of paper towels. My wife always yells at me because I use too many paper towels when I'm prepping my meat at home. But just give them a flip. Go ahead and get these as dry as you can, and then we're gonna go ahead and season. Once we're all dry, I can take a look. We recall one piece that kind of had some extra skin here. We're gonna go ahead and just slice that off, put that to the side. We're gonna go ahead first with our Texas hat hanger. Nice even layer, and again, Texas hat hanger, this is gonna be great because of that salt and pepper base for these chicken wings, and then we're gonna follow it up with our Woodfire and Whiskey Jalapeno Ranch. The most fun part about chicken wings is you can really add any flavor profile you want to. So versatile, just a super easy recipe regardless of what flavors you're adding. The color already from this Jalapeno Ranch is gonna kick these wings up to another level. So I'll do both sides here with the Texas hat hanger, Jalapeno Ranch. Make sure that we coat them on all sides. And as you flip them, there's some of that excess seasoning that's already on the board, so they're just gonna continue to kind of incorporate, really get it all together. We are gonna finish with some crispy skin, smoked chicken wings with this salt, pepper base, Jalapeno Ranch that are gonna seriously blow your balls off. We're gonna let the seasoning here do its job, adhere, melt into that fatty skin for about 5 minutes. In the meantime, we're gonna get that S&S grill. We're gonna set up the slow and sear accessory, and then we'll be ready to put these wings on. We're gonna start by firing up our chimney. We're gonna use about 3/4 of charcoal. We're gonna light it up right in our kettle. What I really like about this cook is we're gonna go ahead and incorporate our S&S slow and sear. This is an insert, it's additional. You don't need it, but let's make your life easier. This is gonna do it. It has a reservoir for the charcoal. So that's where we're gonna dump our lit charcoals. It's gonna be our direct cooking side, 1 zone of our 2-zone cook. It also has a water reservoir. What I like about this, I always use it. I fill it with about a bottle of water. It's gonna do a couple things. If you use something other than water, it could potentially help create a little bit of flavor, but it's also going to help regulate our temperature. By adding water or a water pan to your smoker, you're helping regulate temperature. So that's what this water is going to do. It's going to bubble. It's going to create steam. It's going to keep our chicken wings moist. So the slow and sear method is absolutely incredible, and I'm all about making life easier and creating a better product, and that's what the S&S slow and sear will do. Very easily fits directly into one side of our kettle, and you're set. Once our charcoal is finished and glowing and fired up, we simply dump it into the slow and sear, and we're ready to go. We'll put the lid on, vents open, let it crank up in temp, and then we'll shut them down. And we want to do this cook around between 3 and 350 is good for the wings. We're going to kind of hold it right at a steady 325. Let's get this charcoal going. Lift our chimney. We're going to go ahead and add our accelerant. You can use anything. If you have wax cubes, tumbleweeds, all of those will work. This is going to take about 15 minutes to get these coals lit and glowing right where we want them before we put them in the slow and sear. Go ahead and give it a light. Chimney goes right over top. Instantly get the smoke. See you in 15 minutes. We'll set up the slow and sear and we'll get these wings popping. Our briquettes have been rolling in the chimney for about 12 minutes. Let's talk about this slow and sear real quick. I mentioned that I love putting water, liquid in that reservoir. We're just gonna go with water. These wings are gonna have so much flavor anyway. You could use something like apple juice, just another twist on how you can maximize flavor with this slow and sear. Today, we're just gonna go with a simple bottle of water. This is gonna, again, help regulate the temperature. It's gonna help steam, fully cook these wings the way we want. Indirect, gonna be perfect. The chimney's ready to pour. Call me corny, but this is always my favorite part. I make my wife take videos of me at home because when you pour this, the embers flying up, it's just so cinematic. I mean, does it get better than that? Does it seriously get better than that? Personally, and this is up to you, I always love to add a little bit of hardwood smoked flavor to all of my meat. So for this chicken wings, we're gonna go ahead and add some of that almond wood here from Naughty Wood Barbecue. Again, you can just drop them, no problem. We're gonna grab the grate. With this grate on the S&S, you have a side that opens, right? So I always wanna put that side that opens over the fire. Because if by chance we check in on this cook in 45 minutes and we feel like we need to add maybe another chunk of wood, a little bit more coal, we can simply flip this up and drop some more coals in there. We're gonna put the lid on, cover it, keep the vents open, top and bottom, let it crank up some, and then once we're there, we're gonna drop it and we're gonna try to get to a nice even 325. We're gonna cook these wings pretty fast. They're not gonna take more than an hour to finish up, and then we're gonna sear them directly over the coals for that final nice crunch and crisp on that skin. Remember from our past classes, we've talked about how to put the lid on. Always make sure that the vent is going to be on top of the side where you put your food. Because we have wood chunks, we want that smoke traveling across the top of the lid and exiting on top of the food so we get that smoke. Our S&S kettle is ready to go. We're up to temp. We're sitting at a perfect 300. Now come in here a little bit. You can see with that almond wood, we have a perfectly clear smoke. This is what you call blue smoke. We don't want to see that heavy, dark, white smoke coming out. Absolutely perfect. That's right where you want to be. Let's take this lid off, throw these wings on. We're going to take the wings, layer them, lid on, and we won't look at them for about another 40 minutes. You can lay these however you want. Some people are like OCD. They want all the flats lined up together. They want all the drums together. I don't really care. All I care about are the flats because flats are 10 times better than drums. Fight me. So much room on this indirect side, it really is great. Now keep in mind, some of these wings that are a little bit closer to the fire are obviously gonna cook maybe a little bit faster. It's not something that's really gonna make or break the cook in either way. We have our beautiful layer of chicken wings down. Our slow and sear is rocking. The water's boiling, so you know we're gonna get that steam. We're gonna let these roll for about 45 minutes. Check that internal temperature. With chicken, it has to be at least 165 degrees internal. I like to take them actually up to like 175, 180. Works out perfectly. We'll go ahead and throw the lid on, keep that temperature maintained around 300 degrees, and we'll check back in about 45. Always remember, vent side over top of your meat. We'll check back on these in about 45 minutes. See you then. Let's go. We're gonna take this lid off. We're gonna do our first temp check on these wings. I think we're gonna be ready to take these and put them right over the coals and get that skin right where we want it to be. All right, so a couple observations here. First off, I'm loving the color. Just by opening that lid and looking at the color, I'm gonna tell you, they're done. They're ready to flip over onto the hot side and get that nice crisp on the skin. I love the color. The seasoning looks beautiful. I could not ask for anything better. The flavor on these, I can see how juicy they're gonna be. I mean, you can just really see it all. We're gonna go ahead and take these now, temp them. Once we temp them, if they're where we need to be, we're gonna go ahead and start searing them real quick over the coals. Any digital temperature gauge works perfectly. I'm gonna take a look at this and just strategically, right? I'm gonna look at maybe one of these flats that looks like it's probably the biggest one. Because if I temp the biggest one, I know that the other ones are gonna be perfect. So if I'm looking at all these wings, I have a really big one right here. It's looking pretty good. We're gonna go ahead and temp that. I know that if this one temps where I want it to be, then the rest are probably gonna be perfect. We're right at about 170. Couldn't ask for anything better. We're gonna go ahead and take these and start with the sear. Take a little bit of care with this. I'm gonna do about 5 at a time. I don't want to overload this grate right over the coals and get to a point where I'm burning the wings. Take your time. It's not going to be long. You're looking at maybe 30 seconds on each side because these coals are ripping hot, so it's going to happen fast. I like to start skin side down. So just like you do with ribs or really any piece of meat, you have a fat side and a meat side. This is what I call the bone side right here. The opposite side is gonna be more the meat side, the fat side. This is what you really want nice and crispy. We're gonna start with the sear on that skin side here. So I'm really only gonna keep these on for between 30 seconds and a minute. The skin's gonna crisp up really quick. We're looking about, I don't know, 15, 20 seconds now at this point. And I can tell you if I start to turn it, you're already gonna see a nice, beautiful crust forming on that skin. So once that happens, we can flip it right back over. I mean, you can see this. Just, they're so pretty. You're not burning them. It's the caramelization of all those seasonings, all that fat rendering. I mean, it's really just, it's a freaking beautiful thing. I don't want any more than this. This is about the perfect sear for me on a chicken wing. You're getting that char grilled flavor from the coals. You're getting that flavor from the wood that we have in there. I mean, just beautiful, beautiful looking wings here. And at the same time, these are temping up. So we were around 170. This is gonna get us up to that 180, 185 mark. So once we have a nice sear on both sides, we know we have our space on the grill. We're gonna go ahead and put them back over onto that indirect side. Absolute perfection. So we're gonna go ahead and move these around and then we'll be ready for our next row. Our wings are finished. They're right at about 180 degrees, absolutely perfect for a wing. My perfect, at least. You could take them a little higher if you want to, just never under 165. I have them sitting on the indirect side. I'm gonna go ahead and pull them off, place them on the cutting board, and we'll get into them. I can tell you just by looking at them, they're gonna be juicy, they're gonna be tender. This chicken is just, the flavor is gonna be incredible. These are gonna just pull off the bone, but not fall off the bone, which is exactly how I want all my meat. Quick tip, once you're finished with your kettle, and I'm telling you, especially if you notice that you have a whole lot of coals left, we want to snuff the entire thing. So you're going to completely close the top vent. We want to eliminate any oxygen. We're going to completely close the bottom vent. That will shut that fire down. It'll snuff it. And the next time you cook, you'll actually be left with some more charcoal that didn't burn off yet. That's a wrap on this cook. The only thing that's left to do is dive into these. One little last tip. There is nothing wrong with hitting your chicken wings with a little bit extra seasoning at the end, especially when it's the jalapeno ranch. What I love about this ranch seasoning, this jalapeno ranch, is it's so fine. It's just gonna melt right on top of these wings the second you put them on. So a whole layer of seasoning on top. We're gonna go ahead and give these a little toss, get nasty with it, let all that seasoning incorporate, spread amongst all the wings, and that, my friends, is your finished product. Beautifully, perfectly smoked almond wood, Rub City Texas hat hanger, and woodfire whiskey jalapeno ranch wings. It has taken long enough. I am ready to dive into these and really get a feel for what we just made here. Always do your meat umbrella. If you don't know, now you know. I invented this. One bite. I will take smoked wings on a charcoal kettle with a little hint of wood over any wing you could possibly offer me. That, my friends, is a wrap. Make sure you tag me, Groark Boys Barbecue. I want to see your version. So many that you can make. Tag me at Groark Boys Barbecue. Tag Embers TV. Can't wait for the next one. Enjoy. Welcome back, y'all. Today, we're cooking chicken, but we're not gonna do it like you typically see, cooked whole. We're gonna spatchcock this bird, season it with some sriracha. We're gonna hit it with a beautiful teriyaki barbecue glaze, and we're gonna finish it with a nice little kiss of smoke on our S&S Kamado grill. Let's get this prepped. Let's talk very quickly about what a spatchcock chicken is. To spatchcock your chicken is essentially taking out the backbone and opening it up. You hear of a lot of different proteins being butterflied. We are essentially gonna butterfly this whole chicken. It's gonna help it cook more evenly and quicker than if you were to cook it whole. So here we have the breast. In order to spatchcock the chicken, you'll flip it over onto its backside, and here's the backbone. We're gonna use kitchen shears, and we're gonna cut out this entire backbone, which is gonna open up the entire cavity. We're then gonna flip it around on its breast, perform a quick little CPR, break that breastbone, which will flatten it out, and we're gonna have this beautifully spatchcocked chicken, not only that will cook faster and more evenly, but presents beautifully when you're serving to friends and family. If you don't have kitchen shears, that's okay. You can absolutely cut out the backbone with a knife. Just make sure it is a very sharp knife and be careful. So first things first, I always want to pat dry my chicken. Do not wash your chicken, because all that will do is spread bacteria all over your work surface. We're simply going to take some paper towels and we're going to pat it dry. There is nothing on this chicken that is going to hurt you or create any kind of issues as long as it's cooked properly to a temperature of at least 165 internal. Buckets. So to get started here, I'm gonna go ahead and score the skin where I'm gonna make my incision. Kitchen shears are not made to cut through chicken skin, so the knife's gonna go, a very sharp knife, down the backbone here, right down the side is gonna score that skin so that I don't get caught up having an issue with the kitchen shears. So we're gonna go ahead and make a nice little incision there. Come down the other side of the backbone. Same thing on that side of the skin, just to make your job a little bit easier when it's time to use the kitchen shears. With the kitchen shears, I like to start on the head side. Tends to stick out a little bit more, gives you a little bit of a better visual to work with when you're using your shears. And we're simply just gonna cut directly down the side of the backbone. We're gonna flip it around, do the same thing on the other side, and then we'll go ahead and flatten it out. The ASMR here is wonderful. Hearing those bones crunch. Kitchen shears really are your best friend. If you don't have a set in your house, I suggest getting one. You'll use them for things far beyond just this application here. So that first incision was made. I'm going to go ahead and flip this open so that I have a better visual of where my backbone is here, so I can continue right down the line here. A little bit easier to see on this side what you're doing. And here you have your backbone taken out of the chicken, essentially butterflying it, opening it up, and allowing us to flatten the entire bird. This can be used for chicken stock, for sure, along with any other bones and stuff that you trim from any chicken. All right, whenever handling chicken, make sure you're gloved up, wrap it up. You don't want to cause any potential issues with cross-contamination. So now that we're here, if we turn it towards you, see how we're opened up here? We have both thighs, the legs opened up completely. Looks great. That's going to allow us to put seasoning in here, create just a ton of flavor. We have our breastbone right here. In order to get this completely flat, we're going to have to cut that breastbone just a little bit. You don't have to cut all the way through it. We just want to kind of start. Because what we're going to do here is flip this over. Yes, I am a health and phys ed teacher by day. I teach first aid and CPR as well. So what we're going to do here is a little bit of CPR. Palm directly on the breast, flatten that, give it a little break, and now you see we're set here. I mean, that is a beautifully flat, even spatchcock chicken. It looks beautiful. It's going to cook faster, and it's going to cook more even than if you were to cook an entire whole chicken. So all we're left to do now is season. We're going to do a teriyaki barbecue glaze with this chicken, brush throughout the cook, and we're going to hit it with our Rub City Sriracha seasoning. This is a hot chili rub, so the sweetness of the teriyaki barbecue, we're going to add a little bit of kick with this sriracha. We don't need any oil, olive oil, or anything like that. Plenty of moisture in this bird. We're going to coat very liberally over the skin on both sides because we have that beautiful open cavity here. So we're going to go ahead and make sure we get the entire inside here covered up. More surface area equals more flavor. And this is the perfect example with your spatchcock chicken. Open up those wings, make sure you get inside there. And there we have it. Perfectly seasoned, prepped spatchcock chicken, ready for the smoker. We're going to put this on the SNS Kamado grill using our deflector plate. So the smoke is going to be coming up around the deflector plate, give that chicken a beautiful kiss of smoke, and then out the vent at the top. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. We're going to let this rest for about 10-15 minutes while we set up our kamado, and we'll throw this on for the best spatchcock chicken you've ever had. We're going to fire up the kamado, get it to temperature, again, right around 275. This is going to be a fast cook. We're going for about hour and a half till this is finished. I'm going to set the kamado up a little bit different than I have previously. Last time when I was cooking the beef ribs, I just dumped the charcoal at the bottom and used a tumbleweed and let that go ahead and fire up. Took about 15 minutes to get to temp, and we shut it down. This time, I'm going to use our trusty chimney. I already am going to put a layer of unlit coals at the bottom. And I'm going to fill the chimney up with about a quarter of charcoal briquettes, and we're going to fire those up, dump them on top. So we're going back to what? The minion method. That's going to go ahead and fire them up a little bit quicker for us. We're going to get to temp, and then we'll throw this chicken on. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to remove the grill grate. I'm going to take my briquettes. We're dumping about a chimney amount at the bottom of the kamado. When you're firing up the charcoal, feel free to do it right on the grate. Not going to be a problem at all. So I have about 10 to 12 briquettes in here. We're going to go ahead and grab a tumbleweed. Place that right underneath. Once that's lit, this will take us a few minutes, maybe 8 to 9 minutes. Go ahead and fire that up, and then we're going to dump those coals on top of our unlit. We'll place the deflector plate, put our grate back on, and then we'll be ready to let that get to temp. It'll happen a lot quicker with the minion method. All right, our coals are fired up. It's been about 8-9 minutes. We're ready to dump them. We're going to go ahead and put these right on top. We'll go ahead and remove the grate. This kamado is so big. What's nice about it is you can literally fit an entire chimney in it. So it kind of helps the cause when you're dumping. So you can put them in a nice pile right in the center. So those are good to go. Deflector plate, it's fine. This shows that you have made some absolute kick-ass barbecue at some point in the past. We're going to place that on top. I'm also going to show you a little pro tip on how to clean your deflector plate and grates when you're finished with a cook and it gets all black and messy and disgusting. Super simple. Grate back on. Shut her down. And we go ahead and open our vents. We're going to get this to 275 and we'll be ready to throw our spatchcock chicken on using the deflector plate. Indirect cook. It'll take about an hour to 90 minutes and we'll be good to go. We're back. It's time to rock and roll. The S&S kamado is ready to go. We're sitting at 275, so that's right where we want it. We're going to go ahead and take our spatchcock. I mean, look at this. It's just beautiful. That seasoning is just looking great. It's been sitting for, just a few minutes. That skin's nice and dry. I mean, I'm loving how this is looking already. We have the deflector plate. Our briquettes are running nice. They're going to be low and slow throughout the duration. We're going to pop the spatchcock right on there. Make sure that the legs are flat. You want that nice shape. Wings are tucked. Breast is popping. Boop, boop. Directly in the center of the kamado. It's going to cook nice and even. It's going to be about an hour and a half. We're going to give it about 45 minutes. We'll open it up, take a look. We'll temp it, see where it's at. We have to make sure we finish it at least 165. I am completely fine if this chicken goes up to like 180. It's all bone in. We have dark meat, white meat. We just don't want to dry out the breast. But I'm really not worried about that. We're sitting at 275. This is going to come out absolutely perfect. It's been about an hour. We have our S&S kamado sitting at 300. We're going a little hotter and faster with this because we don't want to dry out the chicken by letting it go for, 2.5 hours. We want to make sure it stays juicy and tender. So we're at a point now, we're going to open it up. We're going to temp in the thickest part of the breast, give us a good gauge of where we stand, how much longer we might have. We're sitting at 155 internal. As you know, we want to get to 165, so now it's the perfect time to sauce. As I mentioned earlier, we're doing a teriyaki glaze, one of my favorite sauces, bachan's, Japanese barbecue sauce, green onion. Hits all the marks in a really good teriyaki glaze, and it's going to set really nice as we get another like 15 to 20 degrees internal on this chicken. We're going to go ahead and glaze this a little bit on the top of the chicken. We're not going to flip the chicken. We're just going to hit the skin. Want to crisp it up, add that flavor. So I'm going to take the bachan's. We're going to go ahead and give it a little bit of a glaze over top. You can be pretty liberal with it. I do have a silicone brush. Give it a nice base. Brush it in. This is going to add just an incredible color. Get that teriyaki flavor that we want to finish with. And we're going to let this go for probably another 15 minutes. And we'll be right around 165, 170. It'll be absolutely perfect. So we have a nice base of that glaze. We're rolling at 300 for probably another 10 minutes. We're going to let that set. Temp up to about 165, 170. Even 175 is fine. That breast is going to be nice and juicy, fully cooked. We'll check back in about 15 minutes and we'll see the final product. It is that time. It's been an hour and a half. We glazed it with that beautiful bachan's teriyaki glaze. We're going to go ahead and temp it. Make sure that we're at least at that 165. As I mentioned before, I'm not worried if it's 170, 175. Once we're there, we're going to pull it out and we're going to break into this baby. It's going to be juicy. So I always go into the thickest part of the breast for my first temp. We're sitting at 170. All right, that's perfect. Then I like to go in between the leg and the thigh where the dark meat is, and we're perfect. We're at like 180, so that's fine. The dark meat is not going to dry out, so don't worry about that one bit. Let's go ahead and pull this thing off. We're going to place it on the cutting board, and then we'll talk about where we go from there. Let me just enjoy that drip for a second. I'm not sure, and I am not kidding. I'm not saying it just because I'm on film. This might be the most perfect looking, shaped, colored spatchcock chicken that I've ever made. And I've made a lot. I'm going to go ahead and turn this around so that you can get a better look at exactly what I'm saying. I mean, sometimes there's just no words. That's money. So you don't have to let this rest. We could dive into this right now, but I understand a lot of times, myself included, timing is a big thing, especially if you have guests. If you do get this done a little bit earlier and your guests aren't going to arrive for another 20 minutes, half hour, you can feel free to tent it with some foil, wrap it tight in some foil. You're not going to lose that color. You're not going to lose that skin. It's going to stay moist and juicy. So you have that on your side if you'd like to. As you all know, we're throwing a party here. We got guests. We got people watching. I got my crew. So we're going to go ahead and cut into this baby right now. A little drip, a little juice, and a ton of flavor. Let's do it. Huge advantage that we've talked about with spatchcock chicken is the time and the consistency of the cook that you get. But another advantage is how much easier it is to butcher when you are ready to serve. We pretty much have it divided into the breasts, wings, thighs, and legs already. Is all we have to do is slice it, and we need something big. Your lines are kind of already made for you there, so I'm going to go ahead and slice the thigh and the leg together. We'll take these wings off, and then you'll have the two breasts ready to go. So simple. It makes life so much easier. Now let me just show you here. Everyone's going to tell you not to squeeze your meat, but it's just so satisfying. Beautiful. That skin is nice and tacky from that bachan's. The meat, obviously moist. That is as close to a perfect chicken quarter as you could get. All right, so we'll move those aside. We have our two thighs and legs. Honestly, with my wings, I just like to use my hands because I'm just going to pop that joint and we can pop those right off. All right, and we've cooked them to 165, 175. So that meat is just going to fall right off the bone. Perfection. And then we have our breasts. So we can go ahead and divide the breast. You could take it off the bone. I like everything on the bone. Personal preference, if you want to go ahead and slice it. For camera's sake, what I'm going to do here is go ahead and slice right down the middle, since we have our beautiful knife. And here's your two breasts. Bone in, not far from an airline cut chicken, but we won't get into that. But that's a beautiful breast there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you kind of, they'll tell you never to do this. You should never slice directly across the breast like that. It's typically not what you want to do. When you do cut breasts, you should do it like this. Okay, you're going to get a better finished product. All right, but sometimes it's just about that money shot. So what I want to do is I'm going to slice directly down the center of the breast here, just so you can see how incredibly juicy the finished product is. I mean, that is just... All right, guys, so let's take a look at how juicy this breast turned out. So we can go ahead and pull that piece off. Now we have this nice piece of breast right here. We can go ahead, slice it into small little chunks. You see, when you slice it that way, you have beautiful piece of skin, ton of flavor there, just incredibly juicy breast, white meat. I mean, there's just not much better than this. I am a huge dark meat guy, but this just looks too good to pass up. So I'm going to go ahead and do our taste. We're going to take a bite on this, and I'm telling you, I already know how it's going to be. That smoke comes out right away. You definitely get that bite of smoke. Excellent. The bachans topped it off. That soy, that sweet, excellent. And then, of course, our sriracha that we used, you get that little bit of a kick from the seasoning on that skin. It's just incredible. I mean, if you want to do a chicken and you want it moist and you want it fast, this is the way to do it. Spatchcock chicken. This is the way I prepare my chicken 80% of the time now. If you want juicy, hot, and fast chicken ready in no time, make sure you spatchcock your chicken. I'd love to see it. Please, please, please tag me. I want to see the results. Tag Embers TV. We have so much more to come. This spatchcock chicken is dripping with juice, and as always, I have so many friends to feed here, so we're gonna be out, and I'll catch you next time with Embers TV. We're back with one of my favorites, smoked baby back ribs. Now listen, I understand. I think I've said everything is my favorite at this point. But if every time you step in your backyard, you're saying this is my favorite, then you're doing the right thing. Barbecue is for you. Why baby backs over spare ribs? Personally, I just prefer baby back ribs. I grew up, Chili's Bar and Grill, I want my baby back, baby back. That tune was in my head every night when I went to bed because my sister was a waitress at Chili's and I went there all the time. So for whatever reason, baby back ribs, they're meaty, little bit of trimming, not much, very minimal prep, and I just like the finished product better. That's me. You may love spares, and that's fine. Listen, you put a rack of spare ribs in front of me, they're not going to waste. But we're focusing on baby backs today, and here's how we're gonna start. Unpackage them, lay them down in front of you, meat side up. First thing we're gonna do is see if we need to do any trimming. Just like every piece of protein that we've cooked up till now, and you will cook, there's always gonna be a little bit of trimming, some more than others. With pork baby back ribs, with beef ribs, there's always gonna be these little kind of outliers here that are just kind of little tabs of meat that you know are going to burn. They're going to be crunchy and crispy. They're just not going to give you a good mouth feel. They're not going to be flavorful. They're going to be burnt and bitter, and you want to get those off. I can see right off the bat already, look at this. That can't be there. All right, so just take your knife, get a grip of that, and we just take that right off. Same thing over here. Look at the end. We got a couple pieces that are just going to be sticking up. Go ahead and pop those off. This is super simple. This is going to take about 2 minutes of your time, but at the end of the day, you know, get comfortable with your meat. Feel it, rub it, smack it. But you can see right here, we don't want that. Get that off. Simple. Don't worry about the fat. The fat on pork ribs is going to really render. You don't have a lot of that hard fat like you do with brisket. So already, after just about 2 or 3 trims, this little piece on the end here, I don't like that. And I can actually feel here, it's going to be a little bonus. I can feel that bone there. I don't want that. I'm going to get rid of that bone because it's just not going to end up being, that's not going to be a nice piece. Now we have a nice even edge on this side. All this fat's going to render down. We're going to be good. All right, so once you have this side looking good, we're going to flip over. Now we're going to get to the most controversial side of the rib on spare ribs and baby back ribs, and that's the bone side where you have the membrane. To pull the membrane or not to pull the membrane. I can't even count the number of videos I've done on this. Sometimes I pull them, sometimes I don't. Sometimes it's personal preference, but sometimes it's very practical depending on the type of smoke or the type of cook you're doing. If I'm doing an open fire cook, if I'm doing open fire ribs, I'm leaving this membrane for a couple reasons. For one, it's going to protect the meat underneath it. Think about doing a brisket fat side down or a pork butt fat side down. You're protecting the meat underneath. Fat is always going to protect the meat. Same thing with the membrane here. It's going to protect the meat. So if I'm doing a high heat open fire cook, like my buddy Al Fragoni, open fire ribs, he never pulls the membrane. And what's gonna happen when you do cook open fire ribs and you keep the membrane on, that membrane's gonna get crunchy, crisp. It's actually gonna add a nice texture and mouthfeel to the ribs. So open fire, I leave them on. If you're smoking the ribs like we're gonna do today, 4 hours, indirect cook, we're using the snake method. We'll get into that later. I'm taking this membrane off because if I leave it on, it's not a high temp. It's gonna get rubbery and soft, and really it's just not gonna create a nice, pleasant mouth feel. Am I gonna take a bite and be like, oh, this is disgusting, I hate it? Of course not. But it's not gonna be the best product that you could put out to your friends and family, and that's what I wanna make sure you do. We'll go ahead and take a look. Not a lot of trim here, but where that membrane ends, right here, you're gonna see that just sticks up. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna trim that off. That's all we need to do here on the bone side. And then we're gonna get into the membrane. People do it a lot of different ways. Some people will take a spoon, some people will take a butter knife, and they'll kind of work it under the membrane. You'll see here, I have a knife here. I'll use this for just example purposes, but I could get under the membrane here and just kind of work my knife through, and I would be able to go ahead and get there, and I could pull that membrane. Now, a lot of people will do that at the far end and pull it this way. I was taught a different way. I wish I knew who it was that I saw it from, because I would give them credit, but I've become kind of a master of it. Your hands are your best tools. When you eat, it's nothing better than eating with your hands. Your hands are your best tools, so we're gonna use them here with pulling the membrane. This is how I was taught. Take your rack of ribs, bend them at the center. When you bend the ribs, the membrane actually starts to pop already. I could pull it here with my 2 fingers. Some people will tell you get a paper towel, because it'll give you a better grip. If you feel like you need a better grip, go ahead and do it. Again, I don't use it. It's a waste of a paper towel. My wife already yells at me for using too many paper towels in the kitchen, so I'm gonna leave that alone. But if you look, you'll see this membrane will start to pop up a little bit. So what I wanna do is take my finger, now watch this, just like that. Just by bending the rack of ribs at the center, that membrane automatically pops for you and you can get your finger in there. Go ahead and get 2 fingers in there. If you can fit 3, go ahead. But we're gonna go ahead and just start to work that. See that finger action? So you can see here how easy, just by bending at the center of the rack, you're gonna be able to, and here's the money shot. And just like that, you're not finagling with a spoon, you're not messing with forks and butter knives and paper towels. This is all you need. Done. Now, we have all the meat exposed on the bone side. So when I go ahead and hit this with the binder and season it, we're gonna use our Rub City Sweet Heat, which is the West Coast sweet heat is just insane. A little bit of pepper, whole lot of sweet, a little kick of heat on the back end is just delicious. It's gonna complement the pork so great. We got the membrane thing out of the way. Let's talk about the second most controversial thing when we're doing ribs, which is the binder. Binder or no binder? Again, the same answer. It's up to you. I, for whatever reason, when I was taught baby back ribs, all the videos I've watched, all the people that have inspired me, more times than not, mustard is always used, your basic, right out of the fridge, yellow mustard, and you're not using a lot. Most people will say, I hate mustard, I don't want to taste mustard. You don't have to worry about it. We're adding such a thin layer of mustard that it's not going to impact the flavor whatsoever. All it's going to do is help the rub and the seasoning to adhere to the meat. We talk about letting the meat sit for a few minutes before you put it on the smoker. That's going to let the rub really sweat into the meat and create just a whole nother level of flavor that gets really deep down into that pork. So that's all we're doing here. Real simple, just a little squiggle of mustard, and we're just gonna go with a nice, easy, thin layer. All right, don't overdo it. You don't wanna cover your cutting board with mustard. Make sure you get the sides. We're gonna go ahead and flip it over. Get rid of all that fat that we're not using. Make sure you get that bone side. Now remember, if you didn't remove the membrane, this gets really slippery, man. It's a thin, slippery layer, that membrane, so you really don't want it. If I'm in my house and I'm cooking 2, 3, 4, 5 racks of ribs for friends and family, I'm always pulling the membrane. If I'm cooking 50 racks of ribs for my community for a food truck festival or something like that, I'm probably not pulling the membrane, but in most cases, I'm always gonna pull the membrane. We're good here. We got a nice thin layer. You can see how thin that is. It's nothing too crazy. You're not gonna taste it. We're gonna follow this up with our Sweet Heat by Rub City. And this is just probably my favorite seasoning for pork ribs. These just come out so good. It creates such, we have a little bit of granulated sugar in here. It creates such a beautiful color and beautiful crust for the end product. You're gonna be really impressed with how this Sweet Heat turns out. Be liberal with it. Again, baby back ribs are nice, thick, meaty bones. You can go ahead and hit it with quite a bit of seasoning and not have to worry about overdoing it. Make sure you get that side part here that could be missed sometimes. We are gonna use the snake method, and we're looking at about 250 to 275 for 4 to 5 hours. We are going straight through with this cook. I am not gonna wrap them. Wrapping was kind of born through the 3-2-1 method, which is not what we're doing here. 3 hours indirect, followed by 2 hours wrapped, and then you take them out of the wrap and do them for another hour unwrapped. That's the 3-2-1, not what we're gonna do today. We're gonna go 4 to 5 hours straight through. We're gonna have a beautiful bark, incredible flavor. My preference is to really taste the pork and taste that seasoning. If you do feel you want to put a glaze or a sauce on them, you do that the last half hour or so. And I'll give you prompts and kind of a breakdown of when you would do those things. But for our purpose today on the S&S kettle, we're using snake method. We're putting these on indirect, straight through for about 4 or 5 hours. So right now we're gonna go ahead and let these sit for about 10 minutes while we prep our S&S kettle. This seasoning is gonna sit and adhere, really melt into these ribs, and these will be ready to throw on once we get this smoker up to about 250, 275. Okay, let's get cooking. We're back. We have our S&S kettle grill. We're gonna set this up for an indirect cook using the snake method. Remember, the snake method is just one other way to do an indirect cook. We're gonna set this up with our briquettes because, as you remember also, briquettes are gonna give us a longer, lower burn that's gonna last for hours as opposed to lump charcoal that is more for hot and fast, gonna fire up really hot. So we're going with briquettes today. Remember what we learned about the snake method previously. We're gonna go ahead and set that up. We're gonna do 2 rows of the briquettes lined up on top of each other, essentially forming a row that's gonna burn over time. And we're gonna place some wood chunks throughout that. So over the course of a 4-hour cook, you're gonna get a nice, even, consistent, slow burn. So we start about halfway, at the halfway point here. Our direct side is gonna be here with the snake method. Our ribs are gonna be on this side. So you start with 2 briquettes flat so that you can stand up the rest almost vertical along the remainder of this half of the kettle. It's almost like you're setting up dominoes, and that flame is gonna follow the length of this snake that you're building across the kettle. We're gonna cover exactly half of this kettle surface on the bottom. And then we're gonna build a little bit of a pile where we start to get that really burning. And if you have some extras, you have a couple here and there, you could always lay them kind of on the top. They're just gonna burn pretty even, keep it nice and prolonged. So it's okay if you have 3 rows, essentially. It's all gonna do the same thing. So we have some nice chunks of oak. We're gonna go ahead and set these in a line across our snake until it takes you to the very end where it'll burn off. Now, getting this started, it's gonna take a little bit of time, a little bit of patience. We only wanna start the one end because as that burns, it's gonna follow the snake all the way throughout over the course of hours. Great time to use either the wax cubes or something like a tumbleweed. What I'm gonna do is just take this, slide it right underneath that initial pile of charcoal, light it, and let it sit for a little while. That's gonna burn that initial chunk. I'll put the lid on, open the vents, top and bottom, and let that temperature come up. We're looking to stay between 250 and 275 throughout the length of this cook. That snake method is gonna allow that long, even, slow, consistent burn. We're gonna light that up and then we'll let it go ahead and do its work. All right, our snake is rolling. It's fired up there at the beginning. So we're gonna go ahead, get our grate on. Remember, just in case, I like to put my grate so that the opening is on the charcoal side, just in case over time I do have to add a couple coals or Maybe if I want to add a couple more chunks of that oak that I have, we can do that. But for right now, we're ready to go ahead and throw the lid on. We're going to open the vents, let it crank up to 250, 275, and then we'll shut those vents down and kind of get it down to that even, slow temp that it's going to be for the next 4 hours. Again, can't emphasize it enough. Vent over the meat. It's open now, so we're going to leave it that way. We're going to check our bottom vent, make sure that that is fully open, and we're going to go ahead and let that temp come up, and then we'll shut it down, and we'll get it right between 250, 275. All right, we're sitting right at 275. That's perfect. Our vent's about a quarter of the way open. We're going to go ahead and do the same at the bottom here. We'll go ahead and grab these ribs. We're going to put 2 racks on. Listen, I'm a little bit hungry, so 1 rack, 2 racks, it's not going to change what we're doing in terms of the process here. Couple little tips while we're setting these up here. Look at how nicely sweat out these are. Just beautiful color. You can see what that seasoning's done to the meat. We're going to put these down. What a lot of people have a tendency to do when they put ribs on the grill is they kind of stretch them, right? And they'll put them down like really long. You want your meat to be compressed when you put it on the grill. So instead of stretching it out, you want to kind of, as you put it down, almost push it together so you have a shorter, thicker rack to collect all that smoke. And we're going to keep these right on the edge here. Remember, we're doing 2 racks on this one. Then we're going to go ahead, place our next rack right next to it. Adjust those as needed a little bit here. We have our snake method rolling. Don't want to mess up your grill. Take your glove off. And we're going to let these sleep. All you're going to do is kind of keep an eye on the temperature. Make sure you're rolling steady at that 275. If it drops a little bit, no big deal. But now's your time. Sit back, relax, grab a drink. I'm going to go get a beer. We're going to keep an eye on this, and we'll check back. All right, here we are, 4 hours in. I have a pretty good feeling that we're going to be right around that 195. We've been rolling along at 275 for 4 hours. So we're going to go ahead and take our digital read thermometer. We're going to open these up, and we'll go ahead and check the temp. I can already tell the color looks incredible. We have a beautiful, deep dark mahogany. Really happy with this. Let's take a look and see where we stand. Always try to get into that thickest part of the meat, and we're right there, 192. Both racks are right at that 190 range, so we're going to end up with a real nice bite. They're not going to be fall off the bone, which is what I was going for. So let's go ahead and take these off and take a closer look. Nice bend, all right. It's always nice to see that bend without them breaking. Just beautiful color, nice bark. We didn't break any of that up by wrapping. We let that bark really set. That's all flavor. If you want to wrap, you could always go ahead at like 170, 175, pull them off, lay out your foil, butter, a little bit of brown sugar if you like, some honey if you really want to sweeten them up. But for me, I love the flavor of the pork, of the seasoning, and that smoke. So I typically don't want to mess with that too much. Let's slice into these and check out what we have inside. Once these ribs come off, if you're cooking for friends and family and everyone's ready to eat, you're perfectly fine going ahead and slicing into these. If you get them done a little bit ahead of time, you certainly can wrap them and rest them for an hour or so. They will stay to temp, they will stay tender, they'll stay hot, and they'll be ready to go when your family and friends are ready. We have a little bit of a crew here. We have some friends, so we're gonna go ahead and slice into these right now. Nice little tip, I always go meat side down so that I can see the bones. When you flip it bone side up, you can see the bones pop out. You can see what direction the bones are running so that you're going to get nice even slices. A couple different ways you can do this. You can either slice single bones or you could slice a double. So what a double will be is if I have meat on both sides of the bone. Each bone I slice is going to have a bite of meat on each side. Or I could push my knife up against the bone, and then your meat's going to be on the one side of the bone. I like hitting it right in the middle so that I have a bite on both sides of the bone. That's what we're going to do here. This slicer's just slipping through like butter here. As we get down here, we have a little thicker pieces. These are the ones I really like. A lot of bark on that outside. Beautiful smoke ring here. All right, nice and juicy. We have meat on both sides of the bone. You can feel how tacky that crust is on the outside. This is going to be a beautiful, clean bite right down to the bone. You have that sweet heat kick from that Rub City West Coast sweet heat. That is just, I mean, it's so good on pork. That beautiful smoke ring comes through because you get hit with that smokiness. I love it on my pork. That is just incredible. And I mean, you're just getting right down to the bone. Such a clean bone. That, my friends, is a perfect rib cooked in roughly 4 hours using charcoal briquettes and a little bit of oak wood. Just incredible flavor. We did this whole cook with the snake method. We did not have to replace any charcoal. Lasted the entire 4 hours. Trust me when I tell you, give it a try. Make sure you tag me, Groark Boys Barbecue, on any of your posts. I'd love to see your recipes, your twist on it. Check us out at Embers TV. Make sure you tag Embers TV. Get outside, fire up those grills, keep cooking, and me and the crew are going to finish these off. Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite pieces of protein to smoke on my kettle, the bone-in Boston butt. This is the cut that will make you the most delicious pulled pork. What I love about the Boston butt, anytime that someone comes to me and asks me, hey, I'm just starting to get into barbecue. I want to start smoking meat. What do you think I should cook first? My answer is unequivocally 100% always a Boston butt for pulled pork. Why is the question. It is easily the most forgiving piece of barbecue that you will cook. You can make mistakes. The temperature could vary a little bit as you're learning to control the kettle and control the fire and that charcoal we've been talking about. So the Boston butt is definitely the first thing that I recommend people try to cook when they're smoking meat. This cut is also known as a pork butt. On the East Coast, you hear Boston butt a lot. Over on the West Coast, all my California West Coast friends will refer to it as a pork butt or a pork shoulder. Varying names, same protein. The Boston butt is easily, by far, the protein that I cook the most. It's what I started with. It's what I kind of mastered, temperature control and charcoal and wood flavor. I mastered all of that by cooking the Boston butt, by cooking pulled pork. It's what I grew my name on, quite honestly, locally with my barbecue business. Everyone was asking for my pulled pork. It lends a lot of availability to throw your own flavors and your own twist into it, depending on what seasoning you use, depending on what binder you may use, and we'll talk about that briefly, how you season it after you pull it, which we'll talk about when we get to that point. The way we're going to tackle this Boston butt today is very, very simple. The other thing about this is, unlike a brisket where you have to do a ton of trimming and make sure that you have a fat cap that's a certain, 1/4 inch thick and you're not going to end up burning thinner parts of the protein, with a pork butt, there's very little prep. We are going to make sure we trim some of the pieces that might be out of whack. There might be some fat that we want to take off that's just not going to render, but it's not going to be much. Once we get to that point, we're going to go ahead and talk about if you want to use a binder or not. Again, that's personal preference. Today, we're not going to. Mustard seems to be a popular one, but we're going to go ahead and do it without a binder. And then we're going to go ahead and season. And once we get to that point, we're going to be ready to put it on the smoker. Our seasoning we're going with, my Groark Boys barbecue for pork by Rub City. And we're gonna go ahead and season this very liberally. It is a thick cut of meat. So once you pull it at the end of this cook, we're actually going to reintroduce more seasoning as well as all those natural juices that we created through the cook. Our goal for this cook is gonna be 5 to 6 hours. We're gonna run hot and fast. Whenever I use my S&S kettle grill, I like to go hot and fast, power through the cook. We're gonna shoot for a 3-hour initial smoke, and then we're gonna go ahead and wrap it with a little bit of liquid. I like to use apple juice. If you wanna use Coca-Cola, Dr. Pepper, maybe you wanna use some beer is always very popular, a light beer, a lager, whatever you choose. That liquid is gonna help steam that wrapped pork butt and get it to the finished product in a shorter amount of time. So a 3-hour initial smoke followed by about a 2-hour wrap, and then we're gonna rest for a minimum of 2 to 3 hours. Let's talk about how we're setting up our S&S grill as far as the charcoal goes. You've already seen the minion method and how I set those briquettes up for that. That is what we're using for this cook. So in the S&S grill, we're gonna split it into an indirect cook, 2 zones. I'm gonna go ahead and dump on one half of the grill unlit coals, about a chimney full. And then we're gonna make a nice little hole in the center, and I'm gonna introduce 5 to 7 lit coals. And what that's gonna do is provide a nice prolonged cook for me. I'm gonna put the lid on the S&S grill, open all the vents, and what that's gonna do is allow oxygen to get in and help crank that fire. By opening all the vents, the temperature is gonna raise pretty quickly. All right, that's what oxygen does to fire. We might get up to 450, but the meat is not on yet. Once we get up over 400, we're gonna start to close those vents, the top vent and the bottom vent to about 1/4. And what that's gonna do is help that temperature come back down and hover right around 300. Once we get to that point, we're gonna watch for that nice, clear, clean blue smoke, and then we're gonna go ahead and put our pork butt on. All right, let's get into the prep and get ready to get this pork butt on the S&S grill. This is easily my favorite part of the process. Whenever I'm prepping anything, a brisket, a pork butt, you'll see here, I don't put gloves on both hands. I always keep a glove hand and a clean hand. I'm gonna have a hand to be able to use the knife to trim, that's my clean hand. I'm gonna be able to use my clean hand to season so I don't muck up the bottle and have to like run it under water and potentially introduce moisture to my seasoning, and then your bottle's ruined. So just a little side tip, right? Barbecue side tip. One gloved hand, one clean hand. You're not actively working on the meat with your clean hand. So I mentioned earlier about how easy the prep is, and this is just gonna take no time at all. I am gonna trim a little bit, and if you come in here, get comfortable with your meat, right? You can kind of play around with it. As you do that, you're gonna feel these parts of the pork butt that are kind of sticking out. Look at this right here. If I put this on the smoker, there's a chance, yeah, it's laying flat here, but throughout the cook, you never know how the meat's gonna react sometimes. I don't want this random piece just sitting up on the smoker. What's gonna happen to that? It's gonna burn, it's gonna get crusty, it's gonna be inedible, and it's gonna prevent the rest of the stuff to kind of do what it needs to do. So real simple, we're just gonna take that off. Now you have a nice flat surface, right? So we can introduce the seasoning nice and evenly. That's perfect. Same thing here, we have all this, right? We have kind of a fat slab right here. We take a look at that. Boom, that's coming off real easy. This is all fat that's just gonna kind of burn and get crispy and crunchy. And unlike a brisket, we're not gonna have a whole lot of loss here with the trim. There's a little bit here kind of sticking up. I can go ahead and just take a nice little swipe straight across, and that'll come off real simple, and we're good. So we're gonna go ahead, that's about all we need. Right? That's the end of the prep. Now, a lot of people will ask you, should I cook my pork butt fat side up or fat side down? So I just flipped this to the fat side, which we also refer to as the fat cap. And this one really doesn't have much of a fat cap. There's a little bit here. You'll see, again, just a piece of that fat that, you know, is just kind of not going to provide or do anything for us. So we just kind of pop that off, no problem. I am always a fat cap down person. It's complete preference for me. with a pork butt especially, there is so much fat throughout the pork butt. I don't really need to put the fat cap on top so that it's dripping all that beautiful fat and moisture down into the pork. It's gonna get plenty of that, trust me. If it does have a pretty significant fat cap, for me, it's gonna protect the bottom from burning, for any of that meat that's under the fat cap to get burnt or overcooked. Again, this one has a very little fat cap, so we're not gonna have any issue with that. As far as prep, that's about it. Let's talk briefly about the parts of a Boston butt. The prize piece of a pork butt is easily the money muscle. So right here, it runs the opposite side of the bone. So my bone is here closest to me, and the money muscle is that strip that runs left to right on the opposite side of the bone. This is easily the prized part. In competition barbecue, the money muscle is presented separately from the rest of the pork butt, the rest of the pulled pork. The money muscle, again, that prized piece, and then directly behind the money muscle, we have these two little semicircles here. These are known as the tubes, all right? They run directly behind the length of the pork butt. And then where the bone is here, we have what's called the horn. All right, and that's this beautiful piece that again also runs the length of the back of the pork butt on the bone side. And it gets its name, as you'll see, because when you separate and pull this pork and you can hold that horn, it looks like a horn. And we'll talk about that as we get there. As I mentioned, I'm not using any binder for this. If you'd like to, you can honestly use whatever you want. I've seen people use hot sauce. I've myself used hot sauce. I have used mustard, I've used olive oil, canola oil, whatever you want. For the most part, you are not going to taste mustard, olive oil, canola oil. If you use something like hot sauce, there can be some flavor transfer. It's a much more powerful flavor than mustard. And the idea of a binder is to help get that seasoning to adhere to the meat so that you don't lose any of it. We're gonna go ahead with my Groark Boys Barbecue for pork rub by Rub City. Again, clean hand, right? We can be very liberal with the seasoning because it's an extremely thick, large cut of meat. As we season, you're gonna notice that the seasoning is gonna start to melt into that pork butt. So much fat, so much moisture in a pork butt that this is exactly what we want from the seasoning. I'm gonna season this. I always kind of use, I don't wanna see any of that pork. I don't wanna see it. I want it all to be seasoning. All right, so we get the top. Do not rub your meat. Love your meat. Pat your meat. We don't want to just rub the seasoning off after we went ahead and put it on there. So once we get that top nice and seasoned, we're going to go ahead and flip, and we're on the fat side, and we're going to do the same here. All of this fat that you see on here is going to render down, melt into the meat, create just some amazing flavor. And with the seasoning, you're going to end up with the natural jus from this pork. And we're actually going to reintroduce that at the end when we pull it. Always make sure to get the sides. Here's the bone side. Always get that money muscle, right? Whenever I do pull a pork butt, whether I'm doing it for my business or I'm doing it at home, when I'm pulling it, I always steal a piece of that money muscle. That's the chef's treat, right? This seasoning is starting to really sweat into the meat. You can already see it. And don't feel bad if you go ahead once you're finished. That meat side of the pork butt, that top of the pork butt was sitting on that cutting board. So we can go ahead and reintroduce a little bit more seasoning on top. And this is all gonna melt. We're gonna go ahead, we're gonna set up our S&S grill, as I said, for an indirect cook using the minion method. We're gonna let that get up to temperature. We wanna hit nice and steady at 300 degrees. Let that blue smoke roll so we know we have a nice clean smoke. And then we're gonna go ahead and get our pork butt on there. So we have our minion method set up here, and remember, these are unlit coals. All right, we are simply setting up for our indirect minion method. So we are going to have the unlit coals ready, and then we're going to go ahead and fire up using a chimney, 5 to 7 coals, And we're gonna put those right in this little indent in the center. And what that's gonna do is gradually create more and more heat over time so that we get a longer, slower burn for this smoke on this pork butt. I'm fortunate to be here at Knottywood Barbecue Ranch. So there is a plentiful amount of almond wood, and this is what we're gonna use for our source of smoke. Feel free, use any fruit wood, apple, cherry, peach, maybe oak. Thankfully, I'm here on a ranch and we have some great almond wood. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take these pieces of wood, I'm gonna drop a couple into that little hole where I'm gonna put those lit coals on top. So we're gonna get that initial fire of smoke so that we can let that get up to temp, start to get that nice clear blue smoke. And then I'm gonna take a couple of the others and just kind of lay them out. So over time, as the rest of the coals on the bottom of the bed pile, the unlit coals, as they start to burn, that smoke is also gonna be reintroduced throughout the first 3 hours of this cook. We're here and ready to get this minion method set up. So as we know with an indirect cook, we have one side of the grill that's empty and has no coals. That's where I always recommend starting your chimney, okay? So remember, we're not dumping a whole full chimney. We're just gonna take 5 to 7 coals, fire them up so that we can introduce them into the minion method to start that smoke. Again, here at the Knottywood Barbecue Ranch, I have a bunch of great fibrous wood shavings. I'm gonna use these as the accelerant. We're gonna put those right on that bottom grate. We'll go ahead and light these, place that chimney on top, and we'll fire up these coals. Once those shavings are fired up, we simply place the chimney on top and we wait. Because we're only lighting up 5 to 7 briquettes for the minion method, this is only gonna take 7 to 10 minutes. So be patient, keep an eye on it, and we'll be ready to go. Our coals here are ready. Again, we have about 5 to 7. They're looking a beautiful orange embers. It's looking great. They're right where we need them to be. We have our minion method set up. So at this point, all we need to do is go ahead and take our charcoal chimney, lift it up, and we're gonna dump those coals directly into the center of the unlit coals. As you see here, you can already see some smoke starting to develop. That's awesome, exactly what we wanna do, all directly in the center where our minion method would set up. We're gonna go ahead and put the grate on. Now we want to start getting to the point where we can control the temperature, so the SNS kettle lid is going to go right on top. When we go ahead and put this lid on, I have my bottom vents completely open. Now, pay attention here. When I put this lid on, the vent is over here. That is wrong. You do not want the vent directly on top of where our heat source is. We want our vent over top of the protein. Whatever it is you're cooking, that's where we want to put the vent. To get that temperature rised up, we're going to go ahead and open that fully. The idea here is as this smoke starts to roll out and exit through the vent, it's going to be forced to go over top of the meat. So if it were over here, that smoke would come directly up and you wouldn't get that same amount of smoke on your pork butt. So you always want the vent on top of the meat so that that smoke can flow over and exit. Open vent on the top, open vent on the bottom. We're gonna let that temp go ahead and rise up. It's probably gonna get to about 400, 450. And then I'm gonna show you how we control the vent and drop that back down to 300 so we can get that pork butt on. Right now we're between 350 and 400, so this is much too hot to put the pork butt on just yet. But remember, we have our top vent open as well as our bottom vent open. So to start to bring this temperature down a little bit more and allow this burn to start to get a little cleaner and get that nice clear blue smoke, we're gonna shut these vents to about a quarter open. So we'll take the top vent, little bit of a turn. We're gonna limit the amount of smoke, the amount of oxygen that's gonna be able to enter from the top. The most important part for controlling temperature is the bottom vent. The bottom vent is where most of the oxygen is gonna come in. The top vent is for that smoke and heat to escape. So the bottom vent right now is wide open. We're gonna drop down. We're gonna close that to about 1/4. The S&S kettle makes this super simple. It shows you where the lever needs to be fully open and where it needs to be fully closed. So we just drop that to about 1/4. So at this point, again, we're just gonna sit, be patient. Remember, barbecue is a game of patience. So we're gonna sit here, give it about another 15 minutes, and that 350, 375 is gonna drop down right to about 300, and we'll be ready to put the pork butt on. Our S&S grill is down to 300 degrees. We're gonna go ahead, grab our pork butt, and we're gonna put it on. It's going right on the indirect side, away from the coals. We're gonna go ahead and close this down. 3 hours, not taking a look. Now it's time to treat yourself a little bit. Sit back, relax, and crack a beer. We are officially at the 4-hour mark of our pork butt cook. So this is the point where we're gonna take off the lid and we're gonna check the internal temperature. We should be dancing between 165 and 170 at this point. First glance, I have a feeling we are right on point. You can kind of visually tell. Beautiful bark is set. On this opposite side here, you can see the bone is starting to pull off of the meat a little bit. That's always a good sign. Get yourself any digital, I love a digital thermometer if you're not using a Bluetooth probe throughout the length of the cook. Something like this works really well. We want to probe this directly into the center of the pork butt. So you can see right here we're at about 172. All right, that's a pretty nice temperature. You can probe a couple different spots. At this point, we're gonna go ahead and bring in a prep table, lay down some foil, couple layers. I'm gonna take the pork butt, lay it on top. We're gonna introduce some liquid, as I mentioned before. We're enjoying some wonderful cold beers here out on the ranch, so we're gonna go ahead and use beer as the liquid. Just add a little bit of that before we wrap it up. Put it back to bed for another couple hours until we reach an internal of 203 degrees. We're ready to wrap. We have our prep table all set up. I suggest using 2 large pieces of heavy duty foil, one on top of the other. We really don't want any of that foil to rip during this last 2 hours when you're moving it around, and allow all those juices, all those natural juices that are gonna accumulate over the next couple hours to be lost, because we're gonna use that for more flavor once we pull this pork. If you do get the chance, I highly recommend take care of yourself, protect yourself. A nice set of cotton gloves underneath your nitrile gloves while you're handling this. This pork is extremely, extremely hot right now. We've been running for like 4 hours. I have my liquid ready to go. Like I mentioned, apple juice, apple cider vinegar, water. We're going with beer today just because it's been such a beautiful day. It's been on our diet from this point. So we're gonna go ahead and introduce a little bit of beer into this just to help create that juice at the end. Beautiful bark. Again, the bone's starting to pull away. So we know this is just in a perfect position, perfect time to go ahead and wrap. So what I like to do here is kind of fold this foil up a little bit prior to doing the liquid. Last thing I want to do is dump the beer or the apple juice or the liquid we're using and have it, all over my prep table. But we're not using a whole beer. You're just going to go ahead. You can have it go along the side. You can pour a little bit on top. Really, we're going about a half a cup, not too much, because we're still going to get all those residual juices from the pork are going to get trapped inside this foil. We are wrapped up like a present on Christmas, and we're ready to go ahead and put it back on the grill for another 2 hours, which will get us exactly to 203, and we'll be ready to rest. At this point, we're ready to go ahead and put this back on the grill. Use this as an opportunity to check your coals. We're 4 hours into the cook. We have roughly 2 hours left. So while I'm putting this back on, I'm gonna give the coals a nice look, see if I'm gonna need to add just a handful to push through this last 2 hours. What's very nice about this S&S grill is we do have a nice little lift on the grate here where we could just simply access those coals and be able to add a handful. We are not gonna need a whole lot, about 10, 12 briquettes possibly. We're still gonna have a lot of ambient heat in this grill, And again, we're only going for another 2 hours, if that, because we know we're at that internal temp of like 165, 170. We are wrapped and back on the SNS kettle. I'm estimating about 2 hours left in this cook. So we're gonna come back and start probing in about an hour and a half. We should at that point be lingering between 190 and 200. We're hoping to pull this off between 200 and 205. 203 is my money temp. That's right where I want it. And then we're gonna come back and we'll talk about the rest and then the pull. Here we are. It has been an hour and 45 minutes. We're gonna check the temperature on this wrapped pork butt. And remember, we're looking for really anything between 200 and 205 degrees internal. So we're able to probe right through the tin foil, and we are right there. We're at 202 degrees internal, ready to go. So now we talk about how we rest. I have a half pan here. I'm gonna take the pork butt off the smoker, place it in the pan. Why a pan? It's simply easier to maneuver. And worst case, if we happen to lose any of those juices while it's resting, if maybe there was a hole in the foil somewhere, this is gonna save all those juices that have accumulated over the last couple hours while it's been wrapped. We do have a few ways that we can rest our pork butt, and they all work equally as well. If you're fortunate enough, as we are here, I do have a Cambro. Cambro just does an amazing job. Put it in, close it, and you don't have to think about it for a few hours. If you'd like, you could also put it in your oven. If your oven is able to come down to about 170, 180 Fahrenheit, you could always slip this pan right in the oven with the pork butt as well. Or a cooler is probably the most common. Everyone has a cooler at their house. What I like to do when I'm using a cooler is I get a pot of water on the stove, get it to boiling, and I'll place that pot of water in the cooler for about 10 minutes prior to putting the pork butt in there to rest. So that heats up the inside of the cooler and will keep it at that temperature you need it. Put a nice heavy towel over top of it, cover it, shut the cooler, and you're good to go for a few hours as well. So let's go ahead. We'll take this pork butt off the grill. We'll put it in the pan and we'll slip it right into the Cambro. As you can see, we wrap this really well. We don't have any of those juices that we've gotten dripping from the foil. So we know that we're gonna have all that flavor built in for after we pull the pork. There you have it. As I said, I like to recommend a minimum 3-hour rest. If you're absolutely in a time crunch, an hour or 2 hours isn't gonna hurt you as long as you've taken this thing up to about 200, 205 degrees internal. We're gonna let this rest for a few hours. We'll come back and we'll talk about pulling it and getting it ready for the plate. The time has come. All your hard work is about to be rewarded, and it's all in this box. Let's take it out. Ta-da! When you open this door, you are hit with just the aroma, the smell, everything that is barbecue. You may have lost sleep because of this little 7-pound piece of meat, and it all just became worth it. So probably my second favorite part of this finished pork butt cook is the unwrapping. It's like Christmas morning, and I'm telling you, if you remember a little bit earlier when I spoke of all those natural juices that are gonna end up in this foil and why it was so important not to puncture the foil and to have it resting in the foil in the pan, this is why. All these juices are just gonna add flavor when we pull this pork. So now we have this half pan that we're gonna transfer our pulled pork into, filled with all those natural juices at the bottom that we're gonna incorporate. And now we're ready for the main event. Nothing is going to feel better than pulling this bone from this pork butt. A nice clean bone is the perfect indicator of a great cook. See how nice and clean the bone is? That shows you that it's a beautiful, fresh pork butt. Love that bone. You want to put this on a mantle. We talked earlier about the different parts. It's really not going to matter because we're pulling it all together, but just for fun, here's that money muscle. I can rip that right off. You can see it's just a beautifully tender piece of pork. This is going to be a prize bite. And now we just get in, take both hands, and get it all together. I mean, this is the result of patience. It's the result of knowing how to control your fire. It's the result of knowing how to control your charcoal. At this point, we have it all pulled. We're just gonna start to incorporate it, get it married with all these extra juices, and then we're gonna season a little bit more on top of that, because keep in mind, you season the pork butt on the outside, and yes, some of that really does sweat into the meat, but we really wanna make sure every single bite has flavor, and we're gonna make sure we do that with our seasoning. Clean hand for the seasoning. Give us a nice shake over top. This is how I do it every single time I cook. Always re-season. Give it a little mix. Don't break up those nice chunky pieces of pork too much. That juice is gonna soak up back into the pork. You're not gonna be left with just a puddle of juice at the bottom. All right, it's all gonna incorporate and get back married to that pork. I mean, this is just, that's a perfect bite of pulled pork right there. Any cook, any chef will tell you, you have to taste your product. You cannot serve people without knowing if the flavor is there. And after 8 hours between the cook and the wait, we're ready to do that. I got a nice barky piece here, whole lot of flavor, little fat, whole lot of meat. Yeah. That right there is the OG of barbecue. Almond smoked pulled pork with Groark Boys Barbecue. Amazing. I hope you enjoyed this cook. I absolutely cannot wait to see all the pork butts that you guys roll out. And please tag me on every single one. If you have questions, shoot me a DM. I'll always be here to help you out. Cheers.